It wasn't. It was during.
We would like to call to order the February 18th, 2014 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. If you would, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time I'd like to introduce the board members starting on my right.
Nancy Plesnarski.
Walter Recook.
Gary Willis.
Christopher Bluer.
Todd Chernick.
The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton.
You still can't hear.
I still can't hear you. Liz? She says turn it up. Thank you for letting us know.
Okay. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determinations. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these four considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would...
Do you want to?
Can you hear me? Yeah. We'll try that.
Is this better?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Would you like me to start over?
Might as well.
The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determinations. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these four considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secure and that substantial justice is done. At this time, is there any adoption or amendments to the agenda? Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see if I could move consideration of variance 13-011 further up on the agenda to be the first item we consider.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to move V13001 to be our first case this evening. Any discussion?
So this is the consideration of appeals case?
Correct.
Yes. Any other discussion? All in favor of moving V13-011, consideration of appeals, Owens Lake Road, 6 Hills, to be our first case tonight, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. It passed. V13011, staff, will you please present?
Do we need to, I'm sorry, number 4?
Meeting minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Actually, you've moved that, now you need to approve the agenda as amended,
Okay.
if there are no others.
No others.
No others? We need a motion then to approve.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as motioned,
As amended.
As amended.
as amended.
We need a second.
Second?
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second to amend the agenda as stated. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same side. We need a motion to approve the January meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve January meeting minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve the January meeting minutes. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously. Our next case is consideration of appeals V13-011. Angela, will you please present?
Before we present, Mr. Chairman, I have received a request for another deferral on that matter from the applicant. It was also agreed to by the co-applicant. I've discussed with staff and council that they have indicated, I believe the phrase was due to let's find it, discontinuity of council and the weather. They need the additional time. I have no reason to question that, and staff and legal we support that request.
Any discussion from the board members?
If I may.
Yes, sir.
Counselor, last month, I had specifically asked the question when we had deferred this, was both the city and the applicant prepared to move forward? And we were told yes. What changed?
Well, I mean, I can.
Because I'm assuming nothing on the city side changed. It's the applicant who's asked for this deferral.
That's correct.
Right. So,
Well, as you recall, the initial process, the initial application was attempting to get a consent agreement to a set of procedures. As that came up, the counsel for the applicant had a medical procedure which took him out, which was the second deferral.
right.
In the process of working on getting those procedures in place for a period of time, we were advised that that counsel was no longer representing the applicant. Therefore, my office began discussing directly with the applicant and the co-applicant to get them on board. That lasted for a short period of time, week and a half, from what I recall.
Something, right.
After that happened, and confirming with their legal counsel, which I did, then I received subsequent notice last week that they had reached some sort of new arrangement, and same counsel was back on board. Although, and I received the initial request February 8th, planning to bring on new counsel, therefore requesting the new deferral for
Right,
tonight.
right.
So they're going to bring on new counsel. After several days, apparently they were going to keep the same counsel on board, but bring in additional counsel as well. But and this is the language of the request, due to the bad weather and temporary break in continuity of my legal representation, we would still like to request a 30-day extension.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. If I can ask just from the audience, how many of you are here regarding the Six Hills case? Just one person? Okay. We've obviously had people show up month after month for this particular case. We've advertised that's going to be heard, not heard. I think we're doing the public a disservice. Is there anything to make us believe that this is going to get deferred again? I know you can't predict the future.
Yeah, I certainly can't predict the future, and I am led to believe that it will go forward. That being said, each time I am presenting it to you. If you wish to express a different potential result, may not necessarily always occur, that can be communicated, and the board's approach to this may give rise to, advice to the applicant about how well received any further deferrals might be by this board.
I can only speak for myself, but I'm at my wit's end on this, and I would expect this to be the last deferral. If they come next month, as far as I'm concerned, and ask for an additional deferral, I would deny. Their counsel can get hit by a truck, I would deny. I mean, there have been enough people that have shown up for this case time and time again, and I think we have to hear it. And I'm speaking only for myself, obviously.
Well, I'd echo the sentiment that this case needs to be heard next month, and that should be relayed to the applicant.
I've heard both of you.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion or anything, or you would?
Yes.
We do.
We would, it is on the table.
Any other discussion?
I don't believe I've heard, I don't recall if there's been a motion. You would need a motion still.
Sure.
I don't think I feel quite as strongly as my two board members. I understand how some things happen. I also understand, and when it comes to legal, things don't move quite as quick as a lot of us would like them to. So I certainly see their viewpoints. I don't see it quite as strict, but I'm certainly willing to entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to table,
Defer.
defer V13-011 till next month's meeting.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I think the reason I'm making that motion is that I believe I have to hear the case. And to hear the case, I've got to hear both sides of the case. And to hear both sides of the case, I need to make sure that the representatives for the other side are here. And that's the reason I'm making it. I agree with one of our other board members that this has gone on pretty long, and we need to get this thing over with. Otherwise, we need to take action on it and ask them to come back in a year if that's what it's going to take.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to defer V13-011 to our March 2014 meeting. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same side. Okay. It passed 4-1. Member Chernick voted against. Sorry you came out again.
Can I make a comment?
Counsel?
We haven't opened the public hearing.
Yeah, we didn't open it.
Correct statement.
Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our next case is V13-014, 980 Mayfield Road. Angela, will you please present?
Mr. Chair, staff would like to request a deferral on this case. We're still working with the engineers to get a layout for the subdivision and to see exactly what kind of variance they're going to need.
Yes, sir?
This case has also been deferred more than one time. First of all, what prompted this variance request, and can you explain more what we're waiting on?
So this is a proposed subdivision in the Crabapple area, and their initial site plan, I don't know, there's a lake on Mayfield Road that they're going to drain, dredge, rework, and the initial subdivision impacted the buffer and the 75-foot impervious setback, but staff has directed them to go back. And there were other issues with the subdivision too, so staff has directed them to go back and rework the subdivision to have less of an impact on the lake. And that's what they're doing. They're still working on the engineering to see exactly how big the lake is going to be, and everything depends on that.
Would it be worth entertaining them withdrawing and reapplying?
Wait 12 months.
They can, but then they lose money. I'm keeping it on the agenda because I continue to advertise it,
which means people potentially continue to come here to hear the case.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they were to be allowed to withdraw and refile if and when
They can.
needed,
I mean,
they're not subject to any time restriction because the case has not been heard. They would just be out $350, which in the grand scheme of a subdivision is,
But
I might suggest that message be relayed to the applicant as an option for them to, until they have a better sense of where they want to go with this. It's my personal feeling as a member here.
Pass that along.
Angela, let me ask you a question. When these things get deferred, is there any, do we send information out? I mean, is it on our website or anything where people can see that it's been deferred so they don't come to these meetings? And how many days prior do we normally, would we do something like that? Or do people just show up and this is the first time they find out that something was deferred?
I try to put it on the agenda as soon as I know. I mean, that may be 2 weeks and maybe 2 days. So this time I think I just like for B1311, I just missed it with the weather. I
And what
guess.
about B13014? When did that show up on the?
Well, I don't have a site plan, so, I mean, we've been talking to them, so I never got anything to tell me, okay, we're ready to
Okay.
hear it, so
right.
we just kept it
Thank you.
as deferred.
Any other discussion or questions for staff?
No.
Do we have a motion? Yes, sir.
Again, like the other case, I just feel we've got to hear both sides of the story to properly rule on the variance. So I recommend deferring V13-014 to our March meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? None heard. All in favor of deferring V13-014 to our March 2014 meeting, raise your right hand. Opposed, same side. 4-1. It's passed. That brings us to V14-002, Wood Road. Angela, will you please present?
This is a 5-part variance. The subject property is 14735 Wood Road. The requested variances are as follows. To allow a barn to encroach in the 50-foot stream buffer, to allow a barn to encroach into the 75-foot impervious setback, to allow a barn to encroach into the rear yard, to allow an accessory structure to encroach into the side yard, to allow a building holding animals, in this case a barn, to be closer than 100 feet from the side and rear property lines. The site 14,735 and 14,737 consists of 5 acres of land zoned AG1. The property includes a single-family home, a barn, a small shed, and a fenced pasture land. It is the home of Phoebe Lockery Stables, a show barn and horse training facility. The owners, William and Phoebe Lockery, purchased the 5-acre property in December of 2000. Mrs. Lockery stated that their 5 acres was originally part of a larger parcel, which was subdivided with the stream as a boundary line. This subdivision, as approved by Fulton County, placed the two original barn structures in the rear setback. In 2005, Fulton County stream buffer rules changed, adding an additional 25-foot stream buffer and a 25-foot impervious setback. Milton adopted these rules upon the creation of the city in 2007 and found in section 2425. These actions created a non-conforming structure. According to section 64-742A of the City of Milton zoning ordinance, a non-conforming structure may remain as long as it is not enlarged, increased, or extended, etc. Once it is altered, it must comply with current zoning regulations. The rules for non-conforming structures were also the same under Fulton County. In February of 2013, the city received a complaint stating that the Lockeries were performing building activities without the required building permit. The city's building official, Wade Green, performed a site visit on February 20th, 2013, confirmed the ongoing work, and issued a stop work order. The Lockeries had joined the two separate barn structures into one U-shaped structure. Section 1086 requires a building permit for any new construction, including enlarging or altering a structure. You can see attached pictures dated 2/26/13 and the Google Earth images which show the progression of the barn from 2008 to 2012. Mr. Green sent Mr. Lockery a letter requesting that he obtain a building permit as well as the business license for the show barn. The business license has since been obtained. In February 2013, Mr. Lockery applied for a building permit for the work on the barn. The application did not include the required site plan, and staff sent him a letter requesting this. You can see the attached letter dated June 21st, 2013. The site plan that the Lockery submitted in response did not reflect current conditions on the site, and staff requested an accurate site plan. The revised site plan was received in August of 2013. Staff then sent a letter to Mr. Lockery informing him of the problems with the location of the barn and that he would need to obtain a variance before the building permit could be issued. See attached letter dated August 16. In 2012, the city revised the zoning ordinance to require that all structures housing animals be located at least 100 feet from all property lines. Again, if no changes had been made to the existing structures, the city would not have an issue with the barn. Once changes were made to the barn, it became non-conforming. If the additions made to the barn were removed, the legal non-conformity use would be allowed to continue, but no building permits could be issued that would add to the non-conformity. Because the Lockery's barn is closer than 100 feet from the side and rear property lines, per section 64415A, a variance is required. Section 64416D states that the minimum rear yard is 50 feet, and section 64416C1 states that the minimum side yard is 25 feet. Section 64416I states that accessory structures cannot be located in a minimum yard. Because the barn, which is considered an accessory structure, is located in both the side and rear setbacks, a variance is required. Also, the Lockeries are requesting a variance to allow the existing accessory structure, a small stable, to remain in the side setback. It is located directly on the eastern property line. It is in violation of section 64416I, which states that accessory structures cannot be located in a minimum yard. Therefore, a variance is required for this structure. February 4th, 2014, the Design Review Board offered the following comments. Obtain letters of support from the neighbors. Consider adding screening to the rear of the barn. Consider closing off the back of the barn so that the horses do not overhang onto the adjacent property. Staff held a focus meeting on February 5th, 2014, at which time the following comments were provided. Building plan review, site plan review, arborist, DOT stormwater had no comments, other than see the attached letters which are in your packet. The standards for consideration we read earlier, and the applicant responds as follows. The barn structure is positioned in such a way that the road and the surrounding properties have the most minimal view of the barn compared to any other viable barn location on this property. The barn predates the homes on adjacent properties that do have a view of the barn, such that the builder owner of these properties would have been aware of a neighboring barn when purchasing and building on the adjacent properties. Moving the barn beyond the setbacks would be a greater detriment to the adjacent properties and alterations to the existing barn. The barn in another location would be more visible from the road and from adjacent properties and would require grading and construction that would be visually unappealing and create noise affecting the adjacent properties. Thus, granting the variance for renovation and addition to the existing structure would be more in the spirit of the ordinance than new construction would be. Strict application of the ordinance would create a hardship due to the topography of the property. The current barn sits on a relatively flat area at the back of the property. The property itself sits on the side of the hill with the house at the highest point and the land running down the hill at various grades in all directions from the house. Some areas are so steep that the grade creates unusable space. The only viable alternate location for a barn on the property would require significant construction expense and would take up valuable pasture land that my business cannot afford to lose. Losing pasture space would be a detriment to the mental and physical health of the horses and would also be a hardship to the property by putting more stress on the remaining pasture land. I believe that the public good is better served by granting the variance because it is in the spirit of Milton as a horse-friendly community. Allowing me to make improvements to the existing barn and maintain my pasture space helps to maintain the picturesque landscape of Wood Road for other residents and for those who use the road for recreation. The additions and renovation requested for the legal non-conforming barn allow the property to remain the most similar to its long-standing use and condition, while providing the space my business requires without overburdening the property or detracting the surrounding properties. Allowing renovation and minor additions to the current barn structure would be a just result for both my business and the neighboring properties and for the city as a community. Recommended conditions. Should the board choose to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions. Applicant shall obtain the required building permits. Neither the barn nor the small stable can be enlarged from their current footprint, and no further disturbance in the stream buffer. This concludes the staff presentation, and just so you know, I also have Mr. Jimmy Sanders here tonight, he's our city engineer, and you can ask any questions.
At this time, are there any questions for staff?
If I may.
Sure.
Angela, in the beginning part of your presentation, you said Mrs. Lockery had stated that the original parcel, a large parcel, there was a stream buffer that was indicated as the boundary line when that parcel was there. Do we have any evidence of that other than anecdotally from Mrs. Lockery?
I've never seen it flat, no.
But nothing's ever indicated that that stream would be considered the boundary line that was permissible?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that's how it was subdivided. When it was subdivided, the stream became the rear.
Became a
property
rear
line.
property line? Okay.
You know, as opposed to being in the middle of the property.
Right, okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I actually do have a question.
Yes, sir.
I actually have some more.
Okay.
She states in her application that regarding in 2009, state passed legislation exempting ephemeral streams such as the subject stream from the provisions of the Georgia Soil and Erosion and Sedimentation Law. And further, agricultural operations are exempt by law. Can you comment regarding the factual basis of those statements? I'm speaking to staff.
I think part of that was in reaction to the business license, and that wasn't accurate. They were required to get a business license, and Jimmy can probably speak more on the impact on the agriculture, on the use itself. I mean, I know it doesn't exempt them from getting building permits or anything like that.
Okay.
Does that exempt them from any codes Does state law exempt them from any code because of the type of business that they are running?
There may be some issues with the stream buffer, but in terms of the city of Milton, like setbacks, it does not. In terms of business license, it does not. In terms of getting a building permit, it does not.
It does not, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions to staff?
If I may?
Sure. Yes, sir.
In some of the applicant's response, Ms. Lockery talks about the amount of pasture land if the barn was moved, et cetera. What's the code of how many horses are allowed on a per acre plot of land, and is that determined as to how much pasture is available? So for example, if I had an acre of land, but I had a 30,000 square foot home, clearly the home takes up a significant portion of that. Can you talk to me about that?
The city of, in AG1, the city of Milton actually does not regulate the number of health horses or any other animal that can be put on the property. There may be some state regulations about that, but the city does not have it.
It is not. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I believe it's Fulton County Health Department has those regulations.
And do you know what those are?
Since I don't have it memorized, I'd rather not say.
Counselor, do you know? Okay.
Don't
thank
know
you.
off the top of my head, no.
Okay. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? At this chair, we'd like to invite the applicant forward to please present. And if you would state your name and address for the board, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Good evening. I hope that you'll give us these variances. We're sorry, we had been in
Please
Fulton
state
County.
your name and
Can you say your name and
address.
address?
Phoebe Lockery, 14735 Wood Road, Milton, Georgia. We had been in Fulton County for many years, and you were allowed to expand a certain percentage without building permits, which is why we went forward and did that. So I apologize for that. And we have applied for, everything that we needed to have since then. And I did have a license from Fulton County also to have that, but I didn't know about the business license for the city of Milton. So, and I have that now. It would be, it's a beautiful farm. We take very good care of it. It's an asset to the community. It's beautiful. It's very well kept. I think Angela was out there today, and it's a very nice piece of property. And the last thing we'd ever want to do is harm anybody's property values or our own as well. Did you have any questions for me specifically? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
One of the things I think always helps us in understanding the case, have you got any letters from any of your adjoining neighbors?
There's only one neighbor that's on the property line. That's the Kuas, and I spoke to him today, and he said that he felt comfortable with anything that I wanted to do, and he said he'd try to get me an email, and I was just checking to see if I'd come through yet, but it hasn't come through at the moment. But I spoke to him today. He came over, and he's looked. We're good friends. The only problem has been the other neighbor, who we do not have an adjoining. The barn is not within any of that buffering area. And I had asked him before we put it in if he felt comfortable with it. He said he did, and then he took about 200 pictures and called the city of Milton.
Okay, and then again, how many horses do you have on the property?
Well, right now we rent 50 acres as well. So right now we probably have about 12 on there, but we use the pasture down the road as well, and we lead them back and forth to the adjacent. It's not adjacent. It's down Wood Road.
So those 12 horses, when they're not out in pasture and housed, they're housed in your property,
In the stalls, yes.
right? And are those 12 the same that have been there for years, or does this increase in barn?
I don't want to have any more numbers than I have now. I can have total of maybe 15 or 16. I will never increase the number of stalls on my property. I don't want any more there. It's a small barn. I'm trying to keep it there.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anyone living in your barn besides the horses?
No, I do not.
Okay.
No, I do not.
And are there any other livestock that are occupying
No.
these barns besides horses?
No.
And do you have any other intent to have anything else, livestock or anything else either on the property or within the barn or stable?
No, I do not at this point in my in life, no.
Okay.
The two neighbors you spoke about, the first one that abuts your property,
The Q is CUA.
but can you tell me where he is on this map?
Can I see it a little bit closer?
And two.
And Angela will give you one.
So, right here where the barn is.
So on the back side?
that's the coolest.
Okay. And on what I will call the east and west boundaries of there, are you saying there are no houses that?
Yeah, there's no houses here, anywhere.
I can't.
It's another horse
Can
farm.
you turn
it just so?
So I can see it too.
So that's a horse farm there.
Okay.
This is the neighbor that, we're very cordial. And this over here, very far away from the barn structure, is the neighbor, his house is right up here about.
Is that the Stones?
Yes.
And the, if the barn had to be relocated, you made a point in your letter stating that the barn would be much more visible from the street and visible to the community in general. Whereabouts on that map would you think that the new barn would have to be located to conform, knowing that you have to keep any structure like that behind the rear of the house, so it can't go in front of the house? Excuse me? They can go? The barn can?
We changed that.
Okay, well, then change the law, so I'm not keeping up with my laws. But
It's 100 feet.
it's 100 feet? Okay. But where would the barn be relocated?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I'm not really sure what we would do. It would be really hard. I think we would have to break into the middle of the property. I can't afford to do anything like that. I'd break into the middle of the property right there and just level out the ground and take another acre away of good pasture, and I wouldn't have too much choice. This barn was always here.
Sure.
You know, when we bought it, it was there. When these people bought their properties, the barn was there, yeah.
Where do you put your, the refuse from the horses? Where do you put your manure?
Well, we do spread it, and we do spread it on the pasture, but we do keep it away. We do have a place down here near the ring where we do put it as well. But
Okay,
it's,
and I don't see the ring on the plan, so I'm so sorry.
It's the
Where's
front.
here's the
down
ring.
here.
The riding ring's right there, adjacent to Wood Road.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So it references that you've made some modifications, which is what brought us here today. How many stables did the barn formerly have, and how many will it have with the modifications?
We will not have, I don't want any more horses.
How many stables did it originally have, and how many are you proposing it to have?
I guess it probably originally had, it's hard to explain because the stalls were wide open and horses just coming in and out, you know what I mean? And so we divided into stalls. But I would say they probably had 15 to 20 horses on that piece of property. And the horses came in and out. It's called run-in, run-out sheds. So,
But let me ask it.
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead.
Mr. Chernick's question a little bit differently. Ma'am, prior to your modifying the barn structure to its existing state right now, how many houses did you board on the property?
prior to what we're talking about, this addition here,
Yes, ma'am.
the difference is 3 horses.
Okay, thank
So you
you.
went from 9 to 12.
9 to 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've covered a few things in the barn now. It also mentions a shed being built on the property, and that shed is also built too close to the property line. Is the shed that's shown, is that the shed that you want to enclose and put your
No, I wanted to get put a shed. I can maybe get one up here, 25 feet away, but it might be I just need a place to store shavings and maybe for the blacksmith.
So the shed that's on the plan is not the shed you're talking about?
No.
Okay, so that's another shed. And what's that shed used for?
This has got 2 horses in it that walk in and walk out.
Okay.
It's inaccessible to vehicles or anything.
And is that another one that we're discussing today? Is
It
that-
really wasn't supposed to be part of this discussion. I think that they had said that was okay because there's nobody over there and it's far away, and I hadn't heard anything about that. So I thought that we were talking about the shed that I wanted to put here, right on this circle here. I think that it's in one drawing that we've had someplace. That would be right here. I probably can get the 25-foot buffer, maybe not, I don't know.
Can you draw on that plan where you're talking about that shed? I think that would help me understand, and maybe the rest of the board.
I can see if I can clean that up a little. Since we're cleaning up.
Yeah. I got
So it's
that.
McLean
I
number.
see it on the plan now.
Where is it?
I see
Show
it.
me, because I don't see it.
Okay, it's
kinda
number 2.
slightly
two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's
I
why
got
she
it.
wants
see
to
it.
put the new shed?
Right.
Oh,
Okay. Oh,
Got it.
okay.
And so what's number 1 on the plan?
Number 1 is the big barn.
So what's to the north of that? What I'll call the north of that? Okay.
So well, I think that when we were talking to some other people, we were hoping that, like, for example, we have each person that has a horse has a tack trunk. Tack trunk's, about that big, and we've run out of room. And so we're in the front of the barn there, we were asking that in the future, we don't want to increase and make this thing much bigger, but it would be nice to have a little more space to fit those trunks in or something. So we thought when we came for the variance, we would say that, we could increase it more than, whatever percentage that would be. It's a very small amount. There will be no changes to the main structure of the barn. The only thing that I was thinking about last night, and I wouldn't mind putting a roof over the edges of the barn. But anyway, I'm not going to get into it. So maybe that's a bad idea.
Let me, go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
One of the things I think, I just want to make sure you understand, what's the purpose of a stream buffer? Do you understand what that is? Do you feel that you understand why the city's making that requirement or
Well,
asking for that?
I think the thing that's hard for me to understand is that the 3 stalls that were added are further away from the stream. All the other stalls have always been there.
Okay.
They've always been there. So we're actually further away from the stream with these 3 stalls than we were. And the main reason for that, really, we have an attic now, so in the attic we have storage space for hay. That was the big thing we were going for there.
I think the answer I was trying to look for is the reason we're trying to keep people out of the stream buffers is basically to help the water quality. And,
Oh, of course, we would never put
and-
refuse down there. I'm very
I understand.
ecologically inclined. Trust me, I'm very careful about things like that.
But I imagine when you wash the horses and they wash off, I don't know if you have a drain per se, but it probably drains out the back of the barn and probably goes on down. And when you wash the stables out and some things like that, I know normally you don't, you would probably pick it out and
The
do
only
that.
thing that we've ever intentionally thrown into that ditch is, and we always call the cuas and say, look, we've got some brush or something, we want to throw that over, because it helps, to buffer the when it was more really of a run. It's not really like a big stream, it's more like when you have a lot of rain, there's water in there. Most of the time of the year, there's no water.
Whatever you do, don't do that, because that does more scouring in the long run.
That's worse to throw
It is.
okay. We thought maybe it would help
It's
with
okay.
erosion.
I mean, not everyone's educated on that, and I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
We
to
would never be
understood.
throwing any manure or anything in there, ever. That would
And
never.
that's
Yeah.
the intent. And then same thing, by keeping it out of the impervious and the building setback, the purpose of that is to create more of a buffer and do that. And, we look at farms in general should be something good for the environment. It's something you're keeping things generally natural. But again, even on manure treatment, you've got to be careful how that's done, distributed. And now, how do you seed your pastures? Are they Bermuda?
No, I pretty much do orchard grass, and then winter I do winter rye, and in the summer I do orchard grass and fescue. And pasture management is huge for me because I need it to be beautiful, and I don't let horses destroy it, and I don't eat it down, and you can see other farms that have. So we spend a lot of time and energy and money seeding, fertilizing, doing everything that we can to try to maintain that grass.
Okay. And then as far as keeping, if I had to say, along the rest of the stream buffer, do you have it fenced so that no animal could go into the creek?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's all fenced. You cannot
Because
get
that's normally
crossover.
what's required by agricultural department and such, that they recommend fencing and keeping
But there's a
keeping
privet hedge.
livestock out.
There's a privet hedge all along there as well.
Okay. Well, great. And I must have walked and driven down that road 300 times, not 1,000, because my daughter rode at Mr. Brown's barn down
Yeah.
the street, and I've walked it many a day. But again, as far as the neighbors are concerned, have you spoke to the folks across the street or?
Yeah, the hunters, they're very, very happy with us, and he's in Florida. I was hoping he'd come to support me
Sure.
tonight, but they had to go to Florida. So, I get along, I've always gotten along, I make a point to get along with my neighbors, do unto others, and it's very important to me. I have gone to great lengths to try to be a good neighbor to the Stones, for example.
Okay.
And anytime anybody would call me and ask me to do anything, I would do it. If they want me to do anything, I would always accommodate them, because I would like to be that kind of a neighbor.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I have one point and one question. Do you understand that if you, and I want to, this is really for staff to weigh in as well, this shed that's along the, we'll call it the left property line if you're looking from the rear to the street, if there's any modifications to that shed, that also falls into being a non-conforming
Don't worry, we're never
structure.
going to touch it.
Is that correct, staff?
Yes.
It's not conforming now because it's in the setback.
All right, so, and making any modifications to it would make it illegal.
That
Yeah.
It would then lose its non-conformity.
All right,
You,
I wanna
you
make
can't
sure
really
that-
get access
Legal
to it.
non-conformity.
Yeah.
All right, so I wanted to make sure you understood that.
I do.
All right,
Don't touch it.
secondly is,
Yeah.
can you help me with some dimensions for the shed that you're looking to propose and for the dimensions on the barn addition?
And I need to clarify the thing about the new shed. I saw the variance about the shed is just the one that's existing. I didn't realize until after I advertised that she was proposing another one. So we would actually have to come back, do another variance to give her permission to put a second shed in the setback.
Well, I might be able to touch the corner of that shaving shed to the corner of the barn, right in the corner of that driveway. I'm almost close to a 25-foot buffer, because it would not house animals.
That would alleviate the need for any variance.
I just would have to touch it to that corner somehow or other.
This variance is just for the existing shed.
So for that one that's shown on the map right now?
She just moved that
Yes.
over.
Okay.
She just moved that number 2 over.
And you would move number 2 where?
If I could have a shed, we don't, well, the big problem we have is don't have a lot of storage space for, like, right now, shavings come in a truck and they dump it out of the trunk, and also the blacksmith. And so if we had a shed that could house the shavings on one side and access for the blacksmith and the vet to get in to examine, put shoes on horses
So
and stuff.
it looks like the only area you could put that adjacent to the barn would be the front corner nearest to the driveway,
Exactly.
away from the property line.
Yes, it would, this is the thing, I hope I can get 25 feet from that property line. It's going to be borderline. And I will go into my driveway, and this driveway is important because not only parking for people that ride, but also because I get big trucks and trailers that have to come in and haul horse in and haul horses out, so you'd like to be able to get in and turn around. But I can...
Let me make sure this is crystal clear, because we're not hearing this variance for this second structure tonight.
Correct.
And to keep you from having a variance, if
gotcha.
it's outside of the setbacks, there's not an issue. Is that correct?
Correct.
You won't need a variance. So if you were to put this second shed in this corner over here,
Yeah,
away from the property line, so if you're looking from the rear of the property, it'd be on the right-hand side of the barn,
yeah.
then you would be in compliance and you wouldn't need a variance. If you try to squeeze it in the left-hand side, you're going to need a variance.
Okay, I got you.
Is that, Angela, would you agree with that statement? Okay.
Okay.
So we're not hearing number 2 shed requirement. However, if you
Okay.
put it on the right side looking from the rear of the property, you'll be okay.
Okay,
All right.
it sounds good.
So what are the dimensions then of the barn addition that are sketched in here?
I would say maybe 12 by 24, maybe, something like that.
And have these modifications
10
already
maybe
been
by
made?
24. No, we haven't done anything, oh, you're talking, sorry,
On the barn?
modifications for the barn? No, we have not done anything. For the variance you're asking about?
Correct.
Correct.
So when we consider a variance, we don't like to have it being just open-ended.
Yeah,
So we would either need specific dimensions, or we would reference a plan which would have dimensions, and your plan doesn't have dimensions.
I would say that, I think we have in there something about the footprint and a certain percentage of the footprint, don't we, Angelo?
In the letter?
In the variance request?
I don't remember seeing
No, we
that.
didn't do a percentage in the
Could we do something like that so we don't have to revisit this?
So, the board will have 2 options. They can approve the work that's already been done to the barn, approve it as it is now, or you can approve her to expand it. Or, I should say, you can allow her to expand it in the future. But our main concern is.
I think there is a drawing on there. I probably could figure out these dimensions.
All
You
right,
could
so
see it sketched there.
So this variance request is to allow her to complete what she's already started, not to take on further additions.
It's staff's main intent to make legal what's the work that's already been done.
Has the work that's already been started, is it completed?
I think, let's see. If
No.
I can picture, there's some painting, there's a little bit that they have to finish on the side and some painting that needs to be done. You can tell between the pictures from today and
It's up.
the picture from 2/26/13, there's a little difference. So we're making,
18. Yeah, I mean, it's done.
Ms. Lockwood, do you know what Fulton County's health law or requirements are for horses?
No, but I know the city of Milton doesn't have one. I do know that.
I understand that, but that wasn't my question.
I really don't. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But I do know that agriculturally, I can have as many hogs on there as I want, I believe. You know, I mean, seriously. I mean, we talked to the Department of Agriculture.
I understand
Yeah.
that, just wasn't my
So
question.
so that's why I don't know if there is one with horses.
Okay.
I really don't.
So with this,
I don't have that picture.
I just want to make sure this is clear, because we bounced. This variance request is to address what's already been started. However, in this drawing,
Missing that picture.
there's some reference to, in addition to the barn, which is not part of this variance request.
I had thought when I applied for the variance that I was asking for that,
Concrete and everything.
that if we
Now,
wanted
this
to
question-
and I
extend.
may not have understood that at first, but yes, you can't allow her to expand the van, the barn.
Okay.
with this variance.
Phase one.
Is this already done?
Yeah.
All right.
They're done.
Todd?
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
We'll look into discussion.
I'll wait until
We do a
discussion.
public
We have to
hearing.
do public affairs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to open the floor for public comment. If you have any, please come forward, state your name and address for the board.
Have they filled out a card?
And did you fill out a card? Yes, sir. If you'll give that to Angela? I did. Thank you.
Great, thank
You're
you.
good to go.
Thank you. My name is Lori Cox, and I'm a Board of Director member with the White Columns Community Association with respect to this variance request. And Angela Paul Demet from our association president had sent a letter via email yesterday expressing significant concerns regarding the extraordinary conditions that it would place on the community. And we would like to request that that study, we have a large study of the water issues with respect to the that property and what drainage, et cetera, from the community that abuts the property in question.
And
So
we
we would-
received that letter.
Okay, so I just wanted to make that statement that you all look at that prior to making any decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this may be more of a question for staff about that report, and asking the staff a question or two about that report, if that's possible. Can I do that, or do you want me to wait?
Let's do public. Let's do. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Mike McGough. I'm a lawyer and I represent John and Erica Stone. They are the adjacent neighbors at 14739, if I've got the address correct, on Wood Road.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
If I stray from the microphone and you can't hear me, let me know. Mr. and Mrs. Stone could not be here tonight. They asked me to be here in their stead, and they are asking the board to vote no on this variance request for 3 reasons. Granting the relief will clearly offend the statutes, the ordinances on the books for the city of Milton. Second, denying the variance will not cause a legal hardship to the Lockeries. And third, there will be adverse or detrimental effects on the neighborhood, including my clients, from allowing the expansion of this non-conforming use. A few facts that I think might be helpful. My clients, and I'll submit these pictures for your benefit. Let me tell you what they are. The barn, which pre-existed, which is the non-conforming barn, was essentially an L-shaped barn squeezed tightly into the far corner of the property. You've seen it on your map. That barn existed in that state according to these pictures, and the Google Earth pictures I've seen in the file corroborate this, until the year 2010. And that's critical because there was not just one expansion of the barn. There were 3 different pieces added on to the barn that will be shown in these pictures, beginning in March of 2010, again in June of 2011, and the last expansion was in December, January of 2012, 2013. I'll pass these pictures forward, and then I refer to that as Exhibit B, just to demonstrate how this barn progressed. I've got another.
May I ask one quick question? When did your clients purchase their property?
I believe in the year 2008.
That's great, thank you.
They built a house at that time and applied for a permit to build their own barn for their 2 horses in the year 2010.
Approximate is good, thank you.
Now, on Exhibit C, another set of pictures I'm going to pass up of the non-conforming barn. The very first picture has all of the additions, the illegal expansion of that non-conforming barn. In the background, the very back row and a right angle turn would be the original non-conforming barn. In the foreground, another row was added to basically turn it into a U-shaped barn structure. The next step was to add another building at the end of the first addition, a shed of some kind, and then the last piece, the third illegal expansion, appears to be an A-shaped traditional looking barn. All of those have been cobbled together with the effect that there is not one single aesthetic design that ties this together. I point that out, and let me pass this forward at this time, because my client had to go through that process of applying and submitting formal plans to the City of Milton in order to have a barn that was deemed aesthetically pleasing, one that was beneficial to the neighborhood and complementary to his own home. As this board knows, Wood Road is an upscale neighborhood. It is estate-sized lots, 3 to 5 acres. Most of those are residential properties. There are a couple of other horse farms in that community, but those horse farms have well-designed, well-built horse barns, and they're situated on land greatly more than the 5 acres that Mrs. Lockery is working with. Actually, Mrs. Lockery's property, I believe, is about 4.78 acres, according to the tax maps. I point that out because the crowding of horses onto this property is an issue for my client. My clients counted 6 stalls of the original L-shaped non-conforming barn. If you look at the submission, Exhibit C, the very first page, it shows a barn as currently built. This series of 3 illegal expansions and the original non-conforming barn has now been more than doubled. Now, I have not been to Miss Lockery's farm. I have not counted the stalls. I know she stood here and told you that only 3 more stalls have been added. If that's the case, it begs the question, what in the world else has been put in this structure that's been cobbled together in this fashion? My clients earnestly believe and have seen as many as 15 horses stabled out there at any one time. It is a farming community in Milton, but this issue is important because it's not a question of whether or not the Lockerys, my clients knew there was a barn on the Lockery's property when the Stones bought their property. They did. They could see it. It's in the pictures they took. But they knew exactly what size it was, and they knew there were only 6 stalls and that many horses on the property. What's happened that makes this wrong to allow this and to approve this variance is that the Lockeries are now seeking to illegally expand a non-conforming use contrary to the Milton Code and basically force the effects of that expansion on the neighbors, doubling, perhaps even tripling the size of the barn and horses on that property. I know, and I don't know what Fulton County's health ordinance are, but I know in the adjoining counties, 2.5 acres to horse is what's required in Forsyth and Hall counties. I'm going to go look up and see what Fulton County provides, but I could not find that before I came here. As many as 12 horses, according to Mrs. Lockery, on 5 acres of land is just not enough. Mrs. Lockery is going through growing pains in her business. Kudos to her, but that's not a financial hardship. That's not the kind of legal hardship that the law is looking for. If she wants to run a horse farm, and has run one all these years apparently, and has succeeded to the point that she needs more space, crowding more horses onto the far corner of her property is not the way to achieve that. It simply defies logic that a horse farm can be run without generating excessive noise, animal waste, odor, insects, stream bank degradation that occurs from those events. The 5 violations that still exist today and have been covered by your staff each have a tremendously important purpose. The stream bank buffers, the impervious structure setbacks are designed to control surface water runoff, preserve the integrity of the streams, and the water quality downstream. We've heard from Ms. Cox and the study submitted by the White Columns neighborhood. I read that this afternoon. It indicates a serious concern about anybody building close to this stream bank because of the water that they now have to discharge. There's a higher volume of water that the state is going to require to be discharged through this stream by the upstream subdivision. Anything built in or near that stream bank is at jeopardy. This council, this assembly should not vote to allow more to be built. Now, the first issue, granting a variance, will it offend the spirit and the intent of your ordinances? It will do more than that. These 5 violations, any one of them would be sufficient grounds to say no to the variance application. Granting the variance application under these circumstances basically nullifies each of those ordinances. It nullifies the city's ordinance against illegally expanding non-conforming uses. It sets a terrible precedent. This board will be faced with many other applicants who will say, the Lockery's got this variance granted. They had these 5 problems. Why can't I have my variance in this situation? The second grounds for denying the variance is it will not cause legal hardship to the Lockeries. Nothing this board does in denying the variance will take away their right to use the farm as a farm and use the non-conforming barn. They simply cannot be allowed to keep the illegal expansions of that barn. Scaled back in that fashion, they have lost nothing according to the law. If there are more opportunities that the Lockeries need to expand their business, I looked in the newspaper today, there are a great many farms in this community that are available for that purpose. One thought that occurred to me is what happens if the Lockeries suddenly lose the other leased property they've got? Where will the horses on that 70 acres wind up going? And what we don't want is with an approved barn illegally expanded, if somehow that were approved, would the horses then be transported and kept next door. There'd be nothing to stop that as far as I could tell. The final point is that granting a variance will be detrimental to this neighborhood. If you look at the design of the barn structures, and I think I've tended that as Exhibit A, maybe not. Exhibit A should be the houses in the neighborhood. Here it is. Existing houses in the neighborhood, and I'll pass this forward. Along with barns that you will see on the farms in those neighborhoods. The first one is my client's house. It's a brick structure, and my client was required to submit plans to get approval for a barn that was consistent. He did, and that's why he was mystified that 3 different times the neighbors were expanding their barn in a fashion that clearly could not have been designed by an architect, could not have been designed with any plan to make it a cohesive, appealing structure in the community. The fact that the rest of the world doesn't get to see it still means my clients do, and they've been saddled with that. I've heard from Ms. Lockery today with a comment, or maybe I heard it from her written comments, that there's already a barn squeezed into that corner of the property, and therefore why not double or triple the size of her barn? What could be the harm of that? And I think we've talked about the effects of that. That would be tantamount to a legal nuisance to increase those effects at the boundaries. The purpose of the generous setbacks under the Milton Code is to protect the neighbors from the effects of overcrowding the development on a property. Otherwise, people would build all the way out to their boundaries, and there would be this clutter. I think that's one of the reasons that the city of Milton has its country charm. It's worked hard to set up good sets of ordinances to protect that kind of aesthetic feel of the community. The last argument I think I heard Mrs. Lockery talk about was that she would lose pasture land if she had to move her barn. That's really kind of zero-sum thinking. If she moves the barn, relocates it properly to a place that complies with your ordinance, there's nothing that would stop her from redeveloping the prior barn land as pasture land. It may take a little effort, but that's the effect of a growing pain on a business. We can't excuse ourselves from complying with ordinances just because our business is succeeding and growing. The final thought I'd like to leave this board with is that I saw, and I'm sorry I can't put my hands on it, a permit application from the Lockeries in 2011. It was not for any of the barn expansion. I believe it had to do with a road cut, some sort of driveway cut, or maybe a turn lane into their property. That fact tells me they knew permission was needed for the improvements they wanted to make on their property. They chose not to apply for any of the 3 expansions of this barn, illegal expansions. And what this says in so many words is that I don't care what your ordinances say. I'm going to build it anyway, and I dare you to stop me. They got stopped in January or February of last year. Mrs. Lockery wrote a very nice diplomatic letter last month asking for the variance. Somebody gave her good advice on how to do that, and that person should be proud. I want to contrast that with the letter that the city of Milton received from Mr. Lockery immediately when the stop work order issued. That letter was entirely different in tone, and it verified what I think is important to me, is that Mr. Lockery's response was that the city could not stop him from using his property in any way he desired to do so. That's not the kind of person that you want to reward with a variance of 5 ordinance violations. On behalf of the Stones, thank you for your time. We ask you to vote no.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, do
Yes, sir.
you have that letter that you just referenced?
From Mr. Lockery.
I do have it. If you'll give me a moment, I could.
Staff
locate
has
that
it, never mind. Staff has it, we're
Thank
fine.
Any other public comment? Yes, sir. You will state your name and address to the board. We certainly appreciate it.
Have you given a yellow card to Angela?
I did.
Great, thank you, sir.
Yes, Isaac Berry, 703 Glenover Drive. And I'm in the White Columns community. I'll try to make it pretty short. The fact is there's some concerns that we have, both that the association has, and I can't speak on behalf of the association, but Lori did. I abut the property on Wood Road, and to my count, there's about 12 properties that either abut or are abutters of the abutters. So I only heard one or two referenced by the applicant, but I think there's about a dozen to my count, and I may be off by one or two. Our request as property owners adjacent is simply that it not be approved at this time, and that we at least be given, both the property owners and the White Columns Association, be given adequate information as far as the site plans, and have a chance to study what impact this may have on the spillway from the dam at Glenover, and be able to at that point in time decide whether we still choose to oppose the zoning variance, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Are you sure you abut this property? Are you mixing this property up with Fortuna Farms?
Well, I received a letter
Yes, sir.
saying that we do.
I think-
And it's Fortitude Farms, correct?
It is. But what I'm saying is...
It's not Fortitude Farms?
No.
Okay.
No. So that's why I'm asking, just to make sure that you know, because I think they send it out in a radius. It's within a
Okay.
certain radius of the properties.
Do you have a plat that we can look
I've been
at?
looking it up on my little phone, which is
And I have to.
is horrible, but I
But
know
someone
the
had a plat
area
here, didn't
pretty
they?
well, and I'm pretty sure you're not touching it, but I want to make sure you're aware of that, because I too was somewhat confused initially when I heard it, and there's an actual map here in this little book that shows properties.
What's your address?
703
And
Glenover
see,
Drive.
it shows a little red square around their property.
May I?
And I know where Glenover is, and it's further back, and it may be a corner that's touching it. And
Well, if it's the property, is the property circled in red, the property in question?
it is, and I think
Okay.
maybe your property's that first one as you cross the dam. Is that it?
That's correct.
And it doesn't quite touch it. You're next to what I used to call Mr. Davison's property. Guy
Yeah, so it
Davison.
looks like we would be on a butter then.
Well,
of the
not
abutter.
quite. You're still missing it by, a couple hundred feet or so, but.
I actually walked.
No, an abutter of the abutter.
Right.
Where is his?
Is that correct?
Your stone's throw away.
Yeah.
We got
I mean, I
it.
can see it from the backyard.
I can see where you can see.
Yeah, you can definitely see it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
You're actually probably the closest of them all.
Procedure, if I may, could I inquire of staff if the notice of the variance hearing was posted at the property by the city of Milton?
We'll address that for you.
Thank you. The reason I'm asking, my client informed me, now I didn't see this myself, my clients informed me that the sign notifying the hearing was not posted on the property until this morning. I thought staff might be able to say if they posted it or not.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Check.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Angela, may I see that? There was a statement made about the creek separating or becoming the rear property line. I'm not sure I understand what that statement is. If it's the creek here that I'm seeing through the property adjacent to mine, or if it's a separate creek that we're talking about.
It's a separate creek.
So it would not be a creek in that case that flows from this
Drains the
dam?
lake. It's not the one that drains the lake or the dam.
Okay.
That's
It's
what
the
I
creek that's
believe.
the
I have a
shore-
staff question.
Because I'm not sure I see, I guess it could be a small creek, but it's not part of
Sure.
the watershed, I
It's the
take it
creek
then?
on the shortest property line, near the rear of the property. That's
Okay.
where the creek abuts to
Along the rear
line.
property line of this property. The
Okay.
rear is always considered parallel or with the longest frontage of a street.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other, you'll get a chance, ma'am. Is there any other public comment? Okay, as there is none, Mrs. Lockry, you do have an opportunity to make a rebuttal. Oh,
I've got some staff questions,
Okay.
because I think it's
We'll
best.
we'll get to you in just a minute.
Is that not right to, if we have some questions that have been brought up by the,
Usually we do questions after, but
I would say, typically you will let the applicant
Okay.
come back up, and then you can address.
come on back up, ma'am.
It's in this wood line.
I just want to say, in Marietta, all the horse people were put out, basically, because of development. You know, this is an agriculture, zoned A1. I have spent the last 25 years that I lived here fighting for A1. Fighting. It used to be A5, it used to be A10. I've had a horse business since I moved here in 1988. 87, 88. You know, it's people move out here because they love the beauty, they love the rural, they love the country. Well, you know, we have to make a living. We are going to be pushed out. I'll be pushed out. And other people will be pushed out. If you want to go walk around to anybody that has a working horse farm, I can tell you they're not going to be in compliance with half of the things you guys got up here. And I know it's not your fault. You're doing the best you can. But it's more when people come in from subdivisions, they want to see everything look beautiful. I'm sorry, but it's unreasonable and unkind, and it's very disturbing to me.
Thank you.
This time, are there any questions to staff from the board members? Yes, sir.
I've got a question for Mr. Sanders, for the city staff. Mr. Sanders, there's been a lot of talk about where the stream is. From what I look at this plan, it looks like it's at the rear of the property, and that's what's causing this barn in particular to be considered in the stream buffer. Is that stream an ephemeral stream, or is it a perennial, or
It's intermittent.
it's an intermittent stream?
Yes.
So under definition by the EPD, an intermittent stream must have a buffer?
Yes.
And is it intermittent stream because there's constant water flowing in that stream?
No, intermittent would be defined as having some base flow.
Okay.
And we identified base flow.
And many of the cases where we've heard applicants ask for allowance to get into the stream buffer, we typically ask them to do some remediation to take care of any potential problems with the stream and stream water running off these structures or whatever. Have they talked to you about doing anything like that involving?
We look at that on a case-by-case basis. And in this case, no mitigation would be required for two reasons. One being that this is predominantly an agriculture activity. Agriculture activities are essentially exempted in most cases for the various different kinds of rules as it pertains to using pasture. Any land that's been used in agriculture activities in the buffers can continue to do so under the rules. Further, the existing structure that was there that was parallel to the buffer. The new structure that was put in was on the other side of that. The drainage essentially goes forward to the other side, and then it goes down to that right-hand side and goes down through the woods a long ways before it re-enters any other stream buffer. So it hasn't increased any discharge into the current buffer that we're discussing.
I know there's also some reference to the white columns. The stream that drains that dam is not the same stream that's at the rear of this property. Is that
No,
correct?
It's not, no.
Okay. And if there was a dam failure, looking at the 1/3 PMP, have you looked at, would that even touch this property?
I don't know that it would. This property's a pretty good distance from that main stream.
Right. So I think that's where I think there may be some misunderstandings about perhaps this property versus and I'm going to mispronounce it again, is it Fortuna Farm? Fortitude Farms. I don't know why I'm having problems with that, but, so that's the one that would be most impacted. And also with a dam failure, you're more concerned with loss of life, which typically refers to habitable structures versus one, and I know this has some animals in it, but this would not be a habitable structure. It could have impact with debris and such.
That's true.
But-
We haven't actually looked at it for a dam breach standpoint. It's fairly high up from the stream that we're talking about.
Right.
And it's a barn anyway, so we really didn't consider that aspect of it, but I don't believe it's in jeopardy of that drainage system.
And just out of curiosity, I don't know if you read that report from White Columns,
I haven't, Walt. I haven't
and they're
seen
talking
it.
about building up a wall or building a spillway. I don't understand why they just don't lower the lake at 8/10 and take care of the problem that way versus raising everything up. It seemed like that would take care of a problem with storage, but maybe I'm uninformed. But I don't know why you can't go down instead of up. But anyway, I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
the
I
report.
don't know how to respond to that
Okay.
because I haven't seen that report. I do know that there is significant storage in that particular lake you're talking about.
And I do need to admit, I am a White Columns resident. I live in White Columns, but not in the gated section. I live in the Oaks. But I don't feel, no one's from the board's contacted me. No one's, I have no financial interest. I have nothing, so I don't feel like I need to excuse myself. But I just want to make sure that's put on the record that I do live in that community. But as far as I'm aware, I've never been involved in a meeting where anything's been discussed involving this dam or any improvements to the dam. So, and what impact it may have. But that's why I was concerned about whether this property would really be impacted by any issues with that dam or that lake, and making sure that perhaps they're uninformed as far as locations are concerned. So,
If I may, sir, and I apologize, sir, I don't recall your name. Bagoff? McGaw? When Mr. McGaw came up and stated for the Stones that there would have to, by approving this, there would be a higher volume of water required that would lead into this stream. Required is the key word in that statement. Can you address that?
Well, it's generally assumed that any increase in impervious surface adds additional runoff. I don't know that the additional amount triggers any volumes that would create anything significant due to the way that this flows through
Okay.
a wooded area for a fairly significant distance, and it would be a sheet flow that would cause any significant impact. Now, if it was concentrated and there was a discharge that collected all downspout water and dumped it straight into the stream, you might have some erosion like that, but I don't know that to be the case. I've actually been out there and looked at the building, and it appears to me that it drains toward the front of the building, which is toward Wood Road, and then goes to the woods to the right-hand side.
So would any of that runoff, ultimately end up in the area that the White Columns Association is concerned about?
Well, it's going to end up in this main stream that we're talking about, but it's downstream from the lake that we're talking about, where
Okay.
the dam is.
Great, thank you.
Can you clarify when you say it flows forward and then to the right
No,
or to the left?
that way.
Towards Fortitude,
Yeah.
away from the Stones.
Yes,
Stones is the house over here.
that's right.
So it would flow this way.
Yes.
And I have a question for staff. I don't know if Angel or Jim, whoever wants to answer, but council stated that this is the third time that this barn has been added on to without a building permit. Does the city agree with that statement?
Well, to be honest with you, we became aware of construction activities early last year, like February. I'm not aware of multiple events that took place. We just, when we got started, what's there is there. Or what's there is all that we had to look at. In other words, I don't have a good record of what was all the, if I lived next door, I might have seen that happening, but the city only became aware at the state that it's in now.
Thank you.
We just have the Google Earth pictures to go by. We don't know when the construction starts.
Angela, Mrs. Lockery spoke about one neighbor in support of this. Do we have any letters from any neighbors in support of what she's doing?
I believe I got.
You didn't get anything? Okay, great, thank you.
This was two that I sent. The White Columns one, and then
We're good,
one
Jimmy.
other one that I sent.
Thank you, sir.
There was a concern expressed about the posting of public notice. Can you comment regarding when things were posted?
Yeah, that is an issue, actually. The sign was not out when I went to the property this morning. I don't know if it was posted and taken down or what.
Did you post it?
No, we give it to the applicant and we have them post it, and then they send us a picture when they post it. I did just check the ordinance, and it does say that if the sign is not up within 20 days of the hearing, it has to be deferred.
And did you get any picture confirmation of when it was posted?
I got the picture this morning.
Okay. Thanks.
So it has to be deferred.
No, the public hearing is closed. Sorry.
This is the letter from her husband.
Yeah, I want to remember.
I have to read it too.
Yeah. Andrew, can we have just a minute so I can read this letter that we just got? Thank you. Hey, you want to do it together? I'll save time.
Angela, if a sign isn't posted, it's not posted out there on the site, what are the real ramifications? Is that something that we need to table this issue? Especially if you've been out there today and it wasn't there. That makes me feel very, very, very concerned whether the proper notices have been filed and all the residents in the neighborhood have been properly informed. And
She says we have to defer.
She says we have to
Yeah.
defer.
Okay.
Without 20 days' notice, you have to defer.
Yeah, we don't have any choice.
Okay. Well, no use for this hearing.
No. That-
Well, I mean, we've gotten all this out. We don't have to do this again.
Well, one of the things I think, I mean, I know we're going to probably make a motion on this, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I saw some kind of way of which water could be treated coming off this site for the additional buildings.
I think there are a couple things that we need. If we're going to defer this and look at this again, I think there are a couple things. I'm uncomfortable that there are no dimensions here, so I don't know what the existing barn was prior to the original construction. I don't know what it is today.
Yeah.
I need to see specific dimensions that are here.
And again, I think the Google map does show what additions have been made to the building. And ma'am, I'm in support of whatever we can to get horses in the community, but at the same time, unfortunately, we've got to do it by the book. And that's what we need to ask everyone to follow. If we throw out the book with one case, then we've got to throw it out with everybody. And anyway, are you ready to entertain a motion?
Is there any more discussion for staff?
No.
This time, we'd like to open the floor for a motion. Yes, sir.
Involving variance V 14-002. I'd like to have this case deferred to the March meeting. And the reason for that is because of issues involving the postage of the signs.
Anything else you want to add? to
Finish
that?
and then I'll.
I think we've said enough that they understand what other issues might come up, but the reason for the deferment is because, for me at least, it's the signage. If there's other things people want to bring up as far as dimensions and
Sure. Yeah,
water
no,
quality and
Sure.
and those things, I think that needs to be addressed as well, but the main reason I'm making the deferral is because of improper posting. And these other issues, I think you'd be well advised to get resolved before the next hearing.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion.
If I may offer a friendly amendment to
Sure.
The suggestion, I would like to, as part of that deferral, make a requirement that a new site plan be submitted as well that shows specific dimensions of the, what I will call pre-existing, is that the correct term? Previously existing barn and the proposed increase. Not by percentages, but by specific dimensions.
And also water quality.
Yeah, it's not as much of a concern, based on what I heard tonight.
Yeah, but from White
A second.
Columns,
We have a friendly amendment to include a new site plan with specific dimensions between the pre-existing barn and the new barn structure.
Only thing I want to call out, it does show at least one point and how close it is to the rear property line, but it does not show these other points in which it could be close to the property line.
Nor the size of the structure.
Nor the size of the structure. So I want to make sure that we're talking about what dimensions you're specifically saying. So it's the rear, the dimensions from the property lines, as well as the dimensions of the structure that's being proposed.
I wanted to interpose, I'm not sure that a deferral conditioned on something to happen in the future is particularly appropriate, first of all, and whether it's effective. I mean, we're deferring, it's something that the deferral will happen now, whether or not they comply with the condition doesn't affect whether or not we defer.
It's not enforceable.
Fair enough.
So certainly, but a recommendation or suggestion that in order to proceed for this board, it would be helpful to have is just a nice comment that they might want to hear.
Fair enough, but I have no objection to that. So with that thought, then I would withdraw my amendment.
And one other comment,
Second.
do we need,
I'll second your withdrawal.
Hang on just a second. Discussion?
I have
Yes.
discussion.
Okay.
We've had a number of people who spoke tonight, including an applicant or a neighbor with counsel. Can staff address how they should handle their appearance next time? Will they need to be reheard?
We've had our hearing, so they have the option of letting more people speak, don't they?
My understanding is, what I would suggest is at the next public hearing, or that at this public hearing, acknowledge that this will be part of the record for the board. However, you will conduct, or continue the hearing rather than defer. Well, let me stop and think. Actually, formally, if there was not sufficient notice, this public hearing really did not occur for record purposes. I think people may appear and say, as I stated before, and summarize, and you'll and get that information in. The documents that have been tendered are part of the county file and part of the record before this board, so those would not have to be retendered. But I believe we will have to, because the reason for doing that is a question as to the notice of this public hearing that renders, could effectively be argued that this hearing did not actually occur.
No, understood.
So I want to make sure the public understands that. If you want to be reheard on this case, you'll need to be present at the next meeting to be reheard.
I've got one more question involving this deferment. Because we're deferring, could this other shed issue be included since it wasn't properly addressed in the initial one? It's shown on the plat, but perhaps not defined as well as it perhaps should be. Could that be added to this so that way they don't have to come back for another hearing?
I can re-advertise for the second shed. I can make specific expansion of the barn.
If that's the pleasure of the applicant.
Yeah, I think if
Well-
the applicant has a desire to do that for the shed, I mean, it would behoove them and ultimately the process to do that.
And then I have one question too, because the Stones have hired legal counsel and they paid him to be here tonight, and if they have to pay him to come back in 30 days to say the same thing, I hate to put the Stones through an additional expense for the board to hear the exact same statements. Is there any way that we can incorporate what he said so the Stones don't have to?
I'm not that old, I'll remember.
Yeah, but based on what,
But
I
based on
think
what he
the
said-
argument would be made that a void hearing is no hearing. As I said, the documents have been put into the record.
I think he's got it
and-
back.
I tried.
He wants to come back,
He
he's getting
doesn't
paid.
So what, all right, council, so what motion do we need to make tonight? Or do we have to,
We just have to defer.
do we have to vote to get the friendly amendment off and then vote to get the?
No, I believe the friendly amendment has been withdrawn.
I would
Okay.
do it, yes, sir.
So all we have to do then is defer to the March 2014 meeting due to sign
vote on it.
postage?
Proper notice.
Due to proper notice?
And vote on it.
Yep.
So we have a,
Give me 1 second.
Do you think there are these other people
No, I'll stand by the original decision. We need to establish the testimony at the next hearing. The documents will remain part of the record, however.
we have a motion and a second to defer V14-002 to our March 2014 meeting due to issues of, you guys don't like? Public notice. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Save this, guys, so we don't.
Yeah, you gotta give that to her. Anything that we can hand by the,
Yeah.
but we need to hand it to her first.
So, with this case though, itself.
And,
$300
I didn't know that's always started. All right, somebody's back.
You know,
Hang on just a second.
We got
You
old
know
new
you're
business.
gonna be called now.
Any old business?
You're part
Hang
of
on.
that.
I do have a question on old business. Staff, you had mentioned about a training session. Has there been any dates selected for that?
We're looking at the end of April. That's the last I heard.
Okay. And are they considering something other than a Saturday?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other old business? Any new business?
There's a person in the crowd raising their hand.
Yes, ma'am?
We're here for the Congress Road in the Hopewell, the building that they're gonna put there. That's why the five of us are here. We got a letter.
314-001.
We got a mistake.
That was, taken off the agenda.
Several weeks ago, we decided last week.
Well, it's been taken off since.
Oh, man. We did not do a good job. We do not. Well, if that just went out this way.
Supposed to know when it's withdrawn.
When it's withdrawn, it's just removed from the agenda.
How we would know.
I don't, we send out notices when it's withdrawn.
We'll address it.
Let,
We'd like to just know something.
We'll address it.
well,
We will,
with reason.
Across the road.
we will address it, I promise you.
We're about, I think we're about to address that right now.
Please. We have no idea what's happening.
I understand.
Not one word have we been told.
So that variance was for, we have a proposed development for Countryside Pet
We
Estate.
can't hear a thing back here.
That development
That development is a proposed kennel. The property is AG1, so the kennel is allowed per use. They're going to build a large indoor kennel, we call it Countryside Pet Estates, and they're going to construct a caretaker cottage. Originally, they were going to set the structure back more than 20 feet from the road, which is the requirement per the Northwest Fulton overlay, and that's what the variance was for. But last week they came in and they submitted a new site plan with the kennel meeting the 20-foot setback. So we withdrew the variance and changed the agenda at that time.
And this has been okayed already?
They have not submitted for any permits or anything like that. So the permits have not been approved, but the use itself is an approved use.
This land has been owned by my family since 1904. All four corners was owned by my granddaddy. And I was not notified about anything.
About the project itself?
What?
You were not notified about the project itself?
Right.
That, I mean, it's allowed use, so we're really not, there's nothing to notify anybody about. I mean, I would think the property owners would speak, I would think the owner would speak to the property owners or the neighbors, that's kind of on him, but I apologize for that, but there's no rezoning or anything like that needs to take place, and since they changed the location of the building, there's now no variance, so the project is in compliance. Yes, ma'am.
There'll be noise?
Everything will be contained inside. There are no outside runs or anything like that.
I just bet. And then we didn't get a notice about tonight.
That will address,
Well,
ma'am.
you got the notice in the mail, and that's all.
Come here tonight.
Right. That's the only notice we would
Tell
have.
us to not come.
No, ma'am. We don't resend notices for
And
that.
why not?
Well, we wouldn't have. Well, we're just not required to do that.
Well, you should be required.
Yes, ma'am.
So
So.
this roundabout that's going in up at Cockburn and Hopewell, okay, this kennel is going to be on what corner?
The entrance, the driveway is slated to be off of Cockburn.
This is not fun. This is not fun.
The entrance will be off of Coburn Road,
Yes, sir.
and right in front of my house.
I mean, I don't know exactly where that.
I'm on the same land lot, and I wish people could talk as loud as I can talk. I can be heard whenever I open my mouth, and I don't need a microphone to be heard. But I read something in the paper just today about a dog kennel that had about 50 dogs, and how the neighborhood was complaining,
Yes.
and about the odor and how strong it was in the summertime. And if you get a bunch of dogs and their body waste, it can be smelled a long ways. And dog urine smells a lot more than humans do. And,
But just so you'll know, this board only deals with variances. So if there isn't a variance, if they don't need a variance, that would go to a different board of the city, not to us.
But we won't be notified about it.
Well, it wouldn't go to any board.
Well, but it would go to city council, correct?
No.
No?
It's within the
Okay.
approved use.
So it would just be approved by the city.
It's like if someone wanted to build a house there,
Right.
all they have to get is a building permit. They don't have to get permission to build a house.
So it wouldn't come to us.
And in addition, any kennel that's built, that has to be approved. You've got to get more than just a Fulton County Health Department approval. You actually have to go through the Department of Agriculture and get recognized as a kennel. We have a lot of friends who run kennels. In fact, we have a very good friend who runs a kennel just down Wood Road. not far from where this application was. And he actually muted his dogs to keep them from barking. So, because he got complaints. So there's a number of ways people who have kennels can take care of things. And then same thing with the waste. He does clean up and scoop up and clean up after the dogs. And I couldn't smell it, and I was there many times, summer and fall, but they're small dogs. So, again, let's hope for the best and see what happens. But they did keep it quiet, but at the same time, they did actually take out some of the the thing that made them bark, actually muted them.
Move on.
But this is a done deal, right? And we get no-
Ma'am,
Let's
it's
take
not in
it.
front of us. We have, ma'am, it's not in front of us. We
don't
have
have
no
any
information
paperwork.
about it.
You
You're
know
t-
as- you know
you're
as much
telling
as
us
we
things
know.
we don't know.
Yeah, you know the same thing we know, because that didn't come in front of us.
But yet, if we want to sell our land, we're gonna get all kinds of static about anything we want.
And again, you're at the wrong, we apologize that you came here tonight, but we don't handle those kind of things. We only handle variances, nothing else.
Someone should have told us about it.
Yeah, and that you may be correct.
Yes.
And we'll see if we can't change that.
If I wasn't gonna handle it, then how come we were gonna be here tonight in front of you guys?
Well, as I said, I just got the withdrawal letter, I think Friday, from the property owner, and I had to remove, and I removed it from the agenda.
So we will, there's two things I can suggest. One is contact the property owner to find out what they're planning to do. That should be for public record.
That's public record.
And two is
Ask
get a
the
hold of your
staff.
city
Ask-
council member and have them find out what's going on. But we don't have any jurisdiction over this case. It's not even in front of us for consideration. As far as you being notified that it's been withdrawn from the agenda, that's something we'll address with staff.
This is a terrible way to treat us.
We
It really is.
empathize.
I'm so sorry that you didn't see the agenda. I hope there's an agenda out front here where you could have seen whether it was on or not on the agenda. I'm so sorry.
It's terrible to put a dog kennel over there.
Well-
It really is. Can't you do something?
No, ma'am.
There's nothing,
That's not,
We
we
can't
don't have
do-
that jurisdiction.
Well, as I said, the board, that will not come before the board now, but again, in AG1 property, a dog kennel isn't allowed use, so there's nothing that staff can do,
Who's the council person?
and, you know.
Ready to sell our land. Can you help us?
I can,
Help us.
I can.
We are here to do whatever we can for the citizens.
My best recommendation is to get a hold of your city council person and discuss this with them.
I've never lived anywhere but on this place, in 3 houses. But it looks like I'm gonna have to go.
Do you know who your city council representative is, ma'am?
Don't,
Do you know who your city council representative is?
pretty sure it's Joe Longoria.
I think it is too.
Is it?
It's Joe Longoria. And ma'am, please don't,
This lady lived in.
well, look,
Down on Concord. Then I lived where the Champions sign is
sure.
till I married. Now I live on Concord again.
But ma'am, don't look at that glass as being half full. You may find out you got the best neighbors in the world. And everything they want to do to make you happy, they may do.
My neighbors have died or moved.
But I'm saying the new person, maybe,
Just let it go. Just let it go.
But I think I'm gonna have to get out of Milton.
I hope not.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other new business?
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
If I may make a suggestion, just to avoid this, if we send out notices in the future,
Well, we can cover that in new business.
that's what we're talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm very rattled.
If we send out notices in the future to people, even though it's been withdrawn, is there any problem with putting it on the agenda saying this case has been withdrawn? Is there any downside to that, either legally or?
No, I mean, I can still do that, but I still think it would have changed that.
I'm not sure it would have either, but it,
Yeah, I hate to give staff more work to do, and this is the first time this has ever happened.
Well, it may, at a minimum, we can update the website.
Well, I
It was.
absolutely,
I
and she
mean,
does.
The agenda is on the website.
They do that.
Right.
And it was-
Yeah, there are a lot of
A lot of
elderly
people,
people.
I know, a lot of the old people don't look, but
But
again, I think-
all I'm suggesting is just simply saying, put it on the agenda, just saying this case has been deferred, or withdrawn.
Tabled or withdrawn, yeah.
Whatever.
I think that's a great point.
That's
I
all
think
I'm suggesting. I'm not trying to give you
I
more
mean,
work.
I've done
'cause-
that before, but this time I just chose to take it off altogether. So.
Well, I understand, and.
If it was there and and we could have reviewed the agenda that is withdrawn, then maybe they wouldn't have stayed.
Right.
Well, yeah, I hate that they didn't stay.
yeah, me too.
Okay. And one other thing we need to publicize, and I'm sure some people know this, but it is online. This hearing is online where you don't have to attend necessarily unless you want to speak.
Yeah. I think they want to
I've got a lot of elderly friends that they do not come to any of these meetings, but they watch every hearing, so.
So we don't have to make a motion for that. You'll just automatically do that because you normally do that, correct?
Yeah, you just didn't instruct. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other new business? We need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We need a second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Thanks.
Man, is it hot in here?
It is hot.
toasty.
I was dying.